but no surprise to those of you who have always known this is here.
It is shocking. It's horrifying. However, you make a good point. Hate is always simmering under the surface, and sometimes it doesn't take much for it to rise to the surface.
Yeah, you grew up in an area of civil rights. Your mom worked in the civil rights movement. She worked with Dr. Martin Luther King. So from the beginning for you, you knew what was there. Tell people what the Anti-Defamation League does and why we should be concerned about what's always around us.
Well, it's an anti-hate organization. Originally was started to fight anti-Semitism or anti-Jewish hate, but immediately our founders determined you can't fight one type of hate without fighting other types of hate. So ADL really, in a nutshell, promotes trying to get everyone to fight hate together, because that's what we all have to do.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's things like what happened in El Paso will happen.
Yeah, and part of the answer here in Houston, Martin, is the Interfaith Ministries group, which what you want people to do is when you start to work together, those walls of hate come down.
That's right. We live in a very diverse city in Houston, and I think our opportunity is to try to build understanding, to help people realize those that are different, to get to know them better, and ultimately respect will emerge from that. And I find that times like these are times that fear is informing people, that the lack of relationship is informing people, and that's when our community disintegrates.
Yeah, all right. Rania, as the head of Crime Stoppers Houston, when you first heard this, what was your first thought?
You know, it's always enough is enough, and we can't hear this anymore. I remember sitting on the set right here at KHOU after the shootings at Sandy Hook, thinking this can't be our new reality. But it is on some level, and it reminds me that we need community engagement. We need all hands on deck to find a solution here. It's not going to lay out singularly on the shoulders of politicians. It's not going to rest singularly on the shoulders of law enforcement. It is going to be in the homes, online, in schools, in the hearts of man, and conversations, and community engagement. It's going to take all of us. And you know what? It's so frustrating when these things happen and everybody starts to point fingers, and we don't have time for it.
Yeah.
We've got to come together and fix it.
And
we just have to.
The other thing is that we all want to have one thing take care of it. You know, it's like get rid of all guns, or
it's
get rid of this, or
not
get
going
rid
to
of
take
that.
care of it.
One thing doesn't take care of it. We also have the conversation over and over again when something like this happens about mental health. And yes, we are glad that there's a spotlight on mental health because there is a need for that. But at the same time, when something like this happens, Dr. Stevens, is this somebody who's mentally ill, or is this somebody who is just narcissistic and taken on this idea and decided to do this horrible thing?
I think we don't have the details. We don't know what's going on right now. But even when the president uses the phrase mentally ill monsters, it puts idea of people with mental health illnesses along with monsters. And that really makes it so hard. That creates such a stigma potentially for people seeking diagnosis, seeking treatment. The large majority of people with mental health issues do not have any violence history. Quite to the contrary, they themselves are often victims. And it's really dangerous when we put those two things together, because it makes people who are patients really at risk. We wouldn't say that about a diabetic. We wouldn't call them a monster, or someone with epilepsy, or someone with cancer. You wouldn't possibly link that, yet for mental health diseases, we do.
Yeah. Yeah, all right. The other thing we saw come up recently is just kind of our glorification of violence. It's our movies, it's our video games. There was actually a young man in Atlanta, I think years ago, who reenacted what happened on Grand Theft Auto. And he actually went out and killed people. That was his defense. And the idea was, well, his brain wasn't formed yet. You know, brains forms after 21, 24 years old, and that's why he did it. But our glorification of violence, we do see that. At the same time we say we hate violence, we also glorify violence.
We absolutely glorify violence. And if you guys recall, about 2 weeks ago, a young girl, 17 years old, Bianca Devins, was brutally stabbed. She was almost beheaded by a young man she met on a social media app called Discord. He proceeded to take photos of her slain body and post it all over Instagram, Discord, and a bunch of...
people watched.
And people not only watched, they made images of her slain body their social media face for the day. You know, they removed their own face and put her body as their picture. That shows there's an inherent lack of understanding. We're dealing with young kids exposed to such unbelievable content. They don't know how to process it. It's not funny. They don't know what to do with it, and they're misusing it, mishandling it, and it's it's causing this ripple effect within communities. Kids are getting desensitized.
Yeah, yeah. Of course, the other issue, racism, it's one of those things that has been driven underground but didn't go away. We don't see quite the same things that we saw perhaps in decades past. I mean, it used to be the law. Discrimination was actually the law at one point in this country. We knocked down those walls, but it doesn't mean that that hatred went away. Give us an idea of some of the things that you all see that are very concerning, because you look for things like terroristic threats or people who are talking about hate in terms of trying to harm somebody.
Well, one of the reports that we put out recently was about 4chan and 8chan, and there's been some talk about postings on 8chan by the man in El Paso, also postings by the Christchurch shooter, postings by Robert Bowers, who did the Pittsburgh shooting that killed Jews in Pittsburgh. So we've been seeing things like that.
Yeah. All right. And in a sense, it's almost like you can get a fan club when you introduce what can happen online, and that can be one of those things that encourages you or makes you think that you're doing something right and makes you a hero. We'll talk more about the impact of the internet and social media when we come back with our panel. And if you have a question, give us a call at 713-533-5230, 713-533-5230, or share on the Great Day Houston Facebook page.
I'm Craig Biggio for Atlas Foundation Repair. If you have doors or windows that stick or cracks in your walls or bricks, do what I do. Call Atlas, a lifetime of experience.
Call Atlas Foundation now or log on and set your appointment.
Atlas Foundation Repair, simply the best.
Need cash? TitleMax offers 2 ways to get it. Get cash using your car title. Go to TitleMax.com, enter the car year, make, model. See how much you can get. TitleMax also offers personal loans. No title required. Check out TitleMax.com when you need more cash. Check out TitleMax.com and shop us for rates. Get up to $2,500 with a personal loan or up to $10,000 using your car title. And you'll say,
I got my title back with TitleMax.
It's a title back with TitleMax.
Life is a journey. And at UT Physicians, we partner with you to provide exceptional, compassionate women's health care. We are focused on one thing, you, and those who might be along for the ride. Practicing the latest advancements in medicine, we are here each day, ready to make a difference. Conveniently located near your home or office. Better healthcare starts with you. UT Physicians.
Don't let the insurance companies screw you over. Car wrecks, truck accidents, DWI. If you've been seriously injured in an accident, call the lawyer you can trust. Call attorney Steve Lee right now. We've been proudly serving the Houston area for over 45 years, and we will not let the insurance companies screw you over. You never need an appointment. We can help you right now. Before you do anything else, call attorney Steve Lee right now.
Making it to the big leagues takes years of hard work and experience. Since 1977, Atlas Foundation Repair has successfully repaired tens of thousands of foundations in Texas. Atlas Foundation Repair, simply the best.
It just makes you scared and understand, that in the blink of your eye, your life changed. I ain't gonna never get those sounds out of my head, the gunshots, and then the people screaming and the trampling and just the fear.
We are back with psychiatrist Dr. John Stevens from the Miniger Clinic, Rania Mankariou, CEO of Crime Stoppers of Houston, Dina Marks from the Anti-Defamation League, and Martin Kaminsky of Interfaith Ministries. And if you have a question or comment for our panel, you can give us a call or share on the Great Day Houston Facebook page. All right, everyone always says what they would do in this moment. And every moment's different. And I was thinking back to when I was in San Antonio in 1979, how many of you have actually heard live gunshots before? Okay, a few of you have, but if you haven't, you're not quite sure what it is. I thought it was firecrackers starting the parade, and we all started to get in formation to march toward the parade until everybody started yelling, run, run, run. So you never really know, but as that man said, you never get that out of your head sound. Exactly. All right, we have several questions from the social media. This is from Twitter from Amanda. She says, why would a law-abiding citizen need an AK weapon to protect themselves, and why can people order these weapons online? It's obviously where those loopholes where you're going through background checks if they're going to be useful. How can you get it online?
And that's such a frustrating part. And it goes back to the bigger issue. When people start running and chanting gun control, gun control, gun control, gun legislation, That's fine. But what are you going to do about all the loopholes? What are you going to do about the person, the 16-year-old, the 30-year-old, who can literally click on an image online and buy whatever they want?
I bought a 9mm Glock and an AK-47 off the street from a 9-year-old boy a few years ago. So
Okay, that's concerning.
Because you can buy anything off the street.
And
that was our point. We wanted to say, okay, so there are those loopholes there. You got to tighten those loopholes. But if somebody's determined to do something, they certainly can do it. And then, of course, there are situations where it was the van in Bastille Day when he used a van to kill 80 people. We had planes, we have bombs, we had Oklahoma City. If somebody's determined, they're going to make something
And we're
happen.
not saying don't do anything.
Yeah,
we're just saying that it's not going to solve
It's
it
not
all.
a singular answer. It's not a singular answer. It's going to take a lot. All right. Jabbar on Twitter says, is there a way to ban violent video games so that this won't happen again? And again, we're kind of pointing to one thing, but as I mentioned earlier, since 1891, when we were kind of documenting these mass shootings and things, 1891, there were no video games. The Luby shooting, there were no video games. And so, just out of curiosity, though, how much of an impact does that make, though, on the brain? I wouldn't doubt that there's some impact that violence, playing it over and over again and shooting over and over again might have some impact.
Totally agreed. And as a child psychiatrist, I don't love these games at all. However, the scientific literature has looked at it and found little to no influence on violent video games and actual violence.
Yeah.
So for the large majority of people, and again, I'm not a fan, and I don't recommend these for my patients, but on the other hand, there is really no scientific connection that we could strongly point to at this point.
Okay. All right. We have a caller, Omar. Good morning, Omar. Can you hear us? Hello? Omar, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Good morning. What's your question?
Yes, my question is there's such an emphasis on video game violence and then also in Hollywood cinema. Why are mass shootings occurring in America on the scale that they are and not in other countries, such as Japan, where most video games are developed? We're the only country that seems to be having that problem.
Yeah, we are a different country, number one. I mean, we got 320 million people, and I think all the diversity that we have and all these different things, that seems to be one of the things that people compare us to so many other countries that don't have the same level of problems that we do. Why is that?
But you are starting to see it in other countries, but I think America's a little bit unique in the sense that we're built on come here, come by yourself, work, build your foundation. I think in these, people are kind of living alone, doing the best they can, and it's all about me, 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 me. And these other countries, we were in Cairo this summer, families stay together, grandparents, kids, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. There is an ingrained sense of we all belong here. We're all one group.
And even discretionary income, where you have more people who can afford certain things here. It's kind of the blessing and the curse, right?
We just have we're sort of all in silos here, and I think that creates a problem.
Yeah. Dina?
Yeah, I think even more and more in silos, because now people just talk to each other over their phones. They don't talk face to face. One of the things that we found at ADL is if you get to know somebody else, you don't hate them. Yeah. So we need to promote that a lot.
Same thing with interfaith, right?
That's right.
And then the whole thing of, you talked about family. Families to be together. Families come in and worship together. But it's that being together and sense of community.
And one of the things we do to introduce people is we have dinner dialogues with people of very different backgrounds coming to learn about a religion and a culture, and being able to understand that, to talk to people of that faith, to ask the difficult questions that they have in their mind, and to ultimately leave with a better sense of who the other person is in our city.
All right. Patricia on Facebook says, why can't websites such as the one the El Paso shooter was on be monitored for any violence that they are talking about? I heard that this is a federal law that they can't be monitored by law enforcement. All right. You all monitor some of those things.
Right, and there are certain things that law enforcement can't monitor unless the person who is posting it has committed a crime. But ADL does monitor those things. We provide that information to law enforcement when we believe they need it, or if something like this happens, we're one of the first ones to go and get information and provide it to law enforcement. For instance, the manifesto. Yeah. We found the manifesto. We were providing it with law enforcement, and so that's one of the things that we do when we see stuff like that. We flag it.
Yeah, but you see lots of stuff like that. There are a lot of people out there just kind of spouting their opinion, and herein lies the problem, Rania, is that you can see somebody who said something, spouted their opinion, which we know your right to free speech is protected, but when do we know that that's crossed the line? You can't necessarily arrest somebody for what they said, right?
No, and what's so unique is Crime Stoppers has a Safe School Institute. We've been in the school since 1997, and it's has a unique way of integrating. We integrate into the schools. We talk to the kids about all the real risks and dangers, and we ask them to please call us anonymously if they feel that something's brewing, something's going to happen.
Say something.
But you know what? Because these kids are in a cohesive community, they're the first line of intelligence, they're the first line of defense. They know this post has some weight to it. This post, this student saying
but
it, there's
some weight to it, and actually going and getting somebody before they do something is the hard part. What happened in Santa Fe. In Santa Fe, he's posing with the guns on Instagram and the whole bit.
And in Parkland.
And when you look at, hindsight's 2020, you go, oh, yeah, he carried that out. Versus what legal rights do you have to actually apprehend somebody before something happens? Or are we talking just intervention?
Well, so we spent about a year and a half trying to create an intervention program, and it's incredibly complicated because people are free. They have rights to talk and to dialogue, but they do cross a line when they're making terroristic threats. And at this point, if you're going to say I'm bringing a gun to school or a weapon to school or a bomb to school, that's a terroristic threat, and FBI is going to show up at your door. So we're engaging the community to come together, alert us, and we've actually removed up to almost 300 weapons from schools before they could be used by a shooter.
Yeah, with
Since
that said,
1997.
conversation we had this morning, a lot of people were like, we'll put metal detectors at our football games, but we don't put metal detectors in schools. We'll talk about that when we come back.
Cypress Creek Pest Control is ready to help you say goodbye to the bugs.
If you have pets, you're going to get fleas in your home. Call today for our double treatment method for fleas.
Say goodbye to the bugs. Once and for all, visit CyCreekPestControl.com.
Why wait to get Medicare coverage if you don't have to? Cigna Health Spring is here for you right now. If you're turning 65 or have low income or recently lost coverage, you may be able to get a Medicare Advantage plan from Cigna Health Spring. Call 1-866-606-7599 to learn more. There's no obligation. We offer plans with no monthly premiums and no primary doctor copays to help limit out-of-pocket costs. You can also get medical, dental, and prescription drug coverage all in one plan. With Cigna Health Spring, you get more coverage at a low cost, plus a team to help guide you toward better health. Don't go another day without finding the coverage that's right for you. Call Cigna Health Spring today at 1-866-606-7599. That's 1-866-606-7599. Cigna Health Spring. Together, all the way.
There are over 3,000 species of mosquito. Let Cypress Creek Pest Control help you take back your patio with our mosquito reduction service, helping you say goodbye to the bugs.
Say goodbye to the bugs. Once and for all, visit CyCreekPestControl.com.
Welcome back to Great Day. All right, a lot of you are talking about this on social media. No surprise there. Let's check in with Brandy and see what's trending right now. Hi, Brandy.
Hey, Deborah. One of the conversations that we've been having all morning is about how we can prevent mass shootings. It's a big topic on Facebook, on Twitter, and I posed that question to some of our followers. Here's what we got. A lot of thoughtful and respectful conversation about this. Corey says, unfortunately, in this day and age, you just can't stop things from happening. She encourages folks to arm themselves and be aware so that if you see something odd, you can be ready to defend yourself. Curtis is one of many people who called on Congress to take action. He says Congress and the president need to stop domestic terrorism. Other folks are calling for maybe a new agency that is monitoring prospective shooters, kind of like the DEA, but this user says it'd be the Shooters Enforcement Agency, something like that. Other people, of course, are calling for gun control. Hugh says Congress needs to step up and put together a uniform plan for regulation, particularly background checks. He says the current patchwork of regulations just does not work. John, who's an avid hunter and respects the Second Amendment, says you don't need an AR-15 with a 100-round magazine to hunt or protect yourself. He says those need to be banned. Maybe we can do a buyback. That's something that we saw happen in New Zealand after the shooting there. other people have highlighted mental illness and how we need to make treatment available. We also need to be aware of people dealing with it and not mock them or ridicule them as they're trying to find help. Shutting down the dark web. This is an important topic because the suspected shooter in El Paso reportedly posted a racist manifesto onto the website called 8chan moments before that shooting happened. 8chan has now been shut down by the company that provides network support for it. It could come back up, but that's a big topic of conversation as well, getting the dark web shut down. And I'm going to wrap it up with this comment from Reb's Boys. It says, I don't know the answer, but we need to do more. She says, more red flag laws, more gun control, more compassion. She says, this kid had hate, not mental illness. And we've seen a lot of that, more compassion, more caring, more respect for our fellow humans. Deborah.
Brandy, thank you very much. Okay, so everything that everyone said, all of you nodded your head, which points to the fact that it's not one thing that's going to take care of it. It's all of those things. You know, and when you said, you know, hate, right? And again, we touched on this earlier, but separating somebody who just hates from necessarily somebody who's mentally ill.
Yeah, so whether it's racism, xenophobia, or bigotry, that's learned, and I believe can be unlearned. By exposure to diversity, other points of views. You don't learn mental illness, and you don't unlearn it, unfortunately, either. You need to be diagnosed, you need to be treated. That's a very important delineation.
Yeah. Someone else said shutting down the dark web. If you've ever gone on the dark web before, and I've done that for stories, you will see the worst of human beings on there. But I talked to an FBI agent last weekend, and he said, you know, the thing about shutting down the dark web is that that's where we get information. So it's a double-edged sword. Sometimes you got to see where people are at, right?
Well, they'll go somewhere else.
They will go somewhere else, or go underground where you can't find them. Right. But the final act is still going to be carried out. All right. There's something you want to touch on. When President Trump said evil contagion, those words meant something to you.
They meant something to me because hate is contagious. And to the doctor's point, you can unlearn hate, but you can also learn hate. So when haters see these things happening, then it sort of emboldens them, and they think, hey, I can do this too.
Yeah.
And so I think that was an important point to make, that this type of evil is very contagious, and we need to battle that.
We see over and over again that Congress needs to do something, an agency needs to do something. That's probably true, but also we're all part of this too. Every one of us as individuals. We again, back to your point of you allow kids to actually report things. I remember last year at my son's high school, there was rumor of somebody who was going to come get even at school and come shoot somebody. And sadly, the first day of school last year, my son came home and I said, how was school? He said, well, I've already planned my escape from every classroom. He already knew. He goes, Mom, will my legs break if I jump out of a two-story? Because I got a two-story class. But that was his most important thing that day. I know when to barricade in, and I know when to get out. And he located his friends, and he said, we're meeting at the corner of so-and-so. We're heading to my mom's house. And so it's sad that kids have to think this. The school is coming up.
Oh, yeah.
And we mentioned before the break that we will put metal detectors in so many other places. But in schools, we say it costs too much.
Well, it's complicated in schools too, because you know you have kids coming in and out of campus. You have many ways. Schools are not built like an airport or a bank. There's many ways in and out. They're very old buildings, so to throw a metal detector at a door and say that takes care of it really doesn't. I can throw something over a fence on the side and go pick it up at, during the day.
The clear backpack. Some school districts have clear backpacks, but I can tell you in that clear backpack you can put something in between.
Absolutely, because there's a pouch for female products. But let me go back to something you just said about your son, which breaks my heart. And you don't have to be a parent for that to break your heart. You have to just have a beating heart. That kids have to deal with this. But here's another thing. We tell kids, you know, think of your emergency exits. Have a plan. Schools, it's okay to talk about it. But that's another layer to the conversation. We just partnered with a group out of West Michigan called Be Nice. They have a program they call it a mental health action plan, because what they're training kids to do from kindergarten.
I love that program.
It's amazing. If you see that little Johnny is isolated, he's acting different, we want you to notice it. And instead of isolating him and further alienating him,
wrap your arms around him, figure it out.
Wrap your arms around him. We've got to change the culture.
Do you remember civics classes when you were in school? I just remember basically those types of classes when I was in school, and now we don't have it, I don't think.
No,
you know, and I did it in elementary school, I did it in junior high, and so it was like, unfortunately, it has to be taught in school.
Yeah.
You know? Okay, so with that said, there are a lot of kids, every time there's a school shooting, for sure, are afraid. A lot of us, anytime there's a shooting in like a Walmart, we're afraid, and we live in fear. With that said, something else that we have to understand is the reason why it has made the news is because it is unusual. Awful, shocking, unacceptable, but it is unusual. So how do we talk to our kids about this, and how do we deal with it because we keep looking over our shoulder?
Well, it really depends on the age of the child. So the way you're going to talk about it with a much younger child, you know, 5-year-old is different from a 15-year-old. Generally, a good rule of thumb is to follow the child's lead. Open up the conversation, usually with open-ended questions. Did you hear about that, especially for a teenager, as opposed to, are you scared, yes or no? Because especially with the teenagers, they're going to answer with the one word, and then you're not going to know where to go with that. But with our own fear, we have to look as adults modeling how we're dealing with this. And if you avoid going to any Walmart, if you avoid going to any place of worship or a church, you're really modeling avoidant behavior, which is only going to solve the short-term problem, but it's not an intermediate or long-term solution. Yeah. I mean, you think back to 9/11, many of us did not go on an airplane, but that's not really a long-term solution. So showing how to overcome the obstacles, not saying you're not going to be careful or take chances, but how to overcome these things that you hear about is really the most important lesson you can teach your child right now by your own behavior, and as well as keeping the door open for dialogue.
Yeah, I talked to a man the other day who said, you know what, I want to be armed in my synagogue, but my synagogue disagrees. And, you know, again, there's that fear of there, and you're right, you can't stay away from those places. In fact, it's the houses of worship that we go to sometimes when we have no place else to go. Something else that one of the politicians said was, I think it was Dan Patrick who said, and we took prayer out of schools. I know that's controversial for a lot of people, but when we come back, I want to talk about the power of being able to rely on something, something that you can rely on. I know I grew up with it when I was in school, but the power of something higher that you can lift it up to and try to deal with fear when we come back.
I'm Craig Biggio for Atlas Foundation Repair. If you have doors or windows that stick or cracks in your walls or bricks, do what I do. Call Atlas, a lifetime of experience.
Call Atlas Foundation now or log on and set your appointment.
Atlas Foundation Repair, simply the best.
4, it's 1, 2,
3 strikes, you're out of
the old ball game.
Sports coverage based on loving sports. KHOU 11 Sports Extra, presented by Xfinity, Sunday nights at 10:30.
Life is a journey. And at UT Physicians, we partner with you to provide exceptional, compassionate women's health care. We are focused on one thing, you, and those who might be along for the ride. Practicing the latest advancements in medicine, we are here each day, ready to make a difference. Conveniently located near your home or office. Better healthcare starts with you. UT Physicians.
Listen, after a serious accident, it's time to call Terry Bryant. You're getting medical care, but how will you pay for it? You might need time off work. How will you cover it? You're at the mercy of a big insurance company. How can you fight back? Make the call to help you move forward. Call board-certified lawyer and former judge Terry Bryant, 713-973-8888, 713-973-8888.
If your home insurance company is denied or underpaid your Hurricane Harvey claim, time is running out. Don't be a victim twice. Call me today at 833-7-RIGHTS.
Call Dick Law Firm at 833-7-RIGHTS.
Making it to the big leagues takes years of hard work and experience. Since 1977, Atlas Foundation Repair has successfully repaired tens of thousands of foundations in Texas. Atlas Foundation Repair, simply the best.
Welcome back to Great Day. All right, so when it comes to what can we do to try and stop this, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick said, and we took prayer out of school. He added a whole bunch of things, but he added that there also. So that always gets a lot of people crazy, but there is the power of faith and a faith-based community.
Well, certainly prayer is allowed in schools. Prayer is allowed
as
by
individuals,
students.
Yes.
They can gather as students. What the law just says is that the principal or school officials can't lead in that prayer. Yeah. So I hope students will come together and pray, or that they'll do that individually.
Yeah, and what do you see, what helps this community when you see all those different faiths coming together and the impact on Houston?
We find a kind of unity that's amazing. We have a multi-faith council where over 90 different clergy leaders come together regularly to talk about issues, to look at things through the different lenses of their faith, but to often find that we come to a common solution, to a common source of a response that will make the difference to help the community come together.
Yeah. All right. We have Tim on the phone line. Good morning, Tim.
Good morning, Deborah. How are you today?
Good, thank you. What's your question or comment?
I think the root cause of this is ultimately the parents. You know, moms and dads, we're responsible for the values and morals for our children, and therefore we should bear some ultimate responsibility. You hear lots of times where parents can't do a thing with their child. Well, you have to get them help. You have to make sure that they, in fact, either you make them get correct or that you get them some help, and you can't simply turn a blind eye to this. And ultimately, they share some responsibility, and those parents, you know, should be held responsible for their kids.
All right. Thank you very much. You know, what that point said, there are some situations where, how did you not know that your kid had a stockpile of gun in their room?
Yeah.
You know, guns in their rooms and things like that. So not as simple as that, but you've seen cases where it's like, how did you not know? And you say, monitor your child's social media, you know, and that's children, but what about the 24-year-old?
Well, it's much harder, and I do think you have to, you know, people say, well, kids have the right to privacy, and you know me, I tell you all the time.
Like my son has no right to anything until he's paying the bills.
I mean, they can, you know, have a crush, I don't need to know about it, but they don't have the right to be writing a hate manifesto and putting it on 8chan, or to be, you know, doing drugs, or you know, they don't. And it's my responsibility as a parent to not just, you know, provide for them, but to be knee-deep, fingers, you know, deep into their lives, talking to them, challenging them, going online, following their social media platforms, being aware of what they might be on, what hidden apps are, what the chat rooms look like, who they're engaging with. It's not easy, though.
Yeah.
It's not easy because mom and dad work and kids live a different life. It's not fair to say it's solely the parents' fault, but certainly parents do have to play a role in raising their kids.
But there are times when kids do that, and you just have that person who is just, the brain is a different beast.
Yeah, I mean, if someone legitimately is showing signs of, you know, a major mental illness, really disruptions in sleep, isolating, you see them going, they're really different from they were previously.
Yeah.
That's when you have to bring them to help. And I'm willing to have that conversation because Texans' access to high-quality mental health care is among the worst in the nation. So we need to have better insurance coverage, better access to high-quality care. And it usually starts in a pediatrician's office for kids or in a primary care, but at least to start there. I think that's where parents can do that.
Yeah.
So instead of just feeling a diffuse kind of anxiety, if there really is a red flag that you're worried about, to bring that child to a mental health provider in school, in a doctor's office, etc.
And of course, one of the toughest things about that is that is only if that parent is in the right space too, right? Because oftentimes we can see that happen, but there are those times, again, where you have like the serial killer who you're like, okay, his parents were nice, they went to church every Sunday, they did this, they did that, and you just never know.
But that's why the community is so valuable. You know, when I talked about for a year and a half, we tried to create a program at Crime Stoppers. We wanted to look at, yes, the parents, but also what are the teachers seeing? What is the coach seeing? What is the school administrator seeing?
Yeah,
What's the school
oftentimes
counselor
the first
seeing?
line of defense. All right, our hour is ending, but this conversation is continuing online. You can stream on all KHOU 11 platforms, and so go ahead and join the conversation there. But thanks for joining us right here.
Don't be a victim of 18-wheelers, drunk drivers, or insurance companies that won't pay.
My client was rear-ended by a truck in Houston traffic. I fought the insurance company and she...
actually falling from being hit by bullets.
I was scared. I didn't know if it was going to hit me or what.
Then all of a sudden, people start running. That's when I started hearing shots fired.
I heard do, 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 and then it went do, 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 do.
I just question, when is enough enough?
We certainly have never seen this in our community. Really, this is not us.
Welcome back to Great Day Houston. We are online now talking about the mass shootings that happened over the weekend. We've gathered a panel of experts who are offering their advice as to what we can do as a community to perhaps lessen the chances of something like that happening here. Dr. John Stevens is with the Miniger Clinic. Rania Mancarius is the CEO of Crime Stoppers of Houston. Dina Marks is with the Anti-Defamation League. And Martin Kaminsky is the CEO of Interfaith Ministries. Okay. So before the break, one of the things that you said, Dr. Stevens, was that we have to make mental health treatment available to people. We have to, first of all, remove that stigma. And I think we're doing a good job of marching in that direction. Ronnie, you talked about we got to put that in schools, but access to good mental health care.
And that this discussion can't just be, well, after a tragedy. Because right now there's grieving, there's anger. The issues are really legislative. And where is the movement on mental health issues? Sadly, for many Texans, high-quality mental health care is completely out of reach. They wouldn't even know where to start. And even if a pediatrician or a primary care refers you to a mental health provider, a therapist, a psychiatrist, etc., the waits are weeks and months. And that's just unacceptable. If you
it
have
might
a
not
child
be covered
in
under
acute
insurance
illness.
in many cases.
Absolutely. We had, I don't know if you remember, after Santa Fe, you had some of the high school students here. And like your son, when you started talking about these red flags that are scary, they were responding to you, yeah, we see that. We know who. We know in the school right now who are the ones that are struggling.
Exactly.
That was really shocking for us. That was really sad to hear. That the students themselves, the high schoolers, knew more than perhaps the teachers, the principal, us as other adults concerned, mental health providers.
Which are oftentimes the first line of defense, really,
That's
right? Even before a parent may know, because as we mentioned before, kids can be good at kind of hiding things, right? The one-word answers with a teenager. We know what happened with Columbine. The parents were like, didn't know the kids had all this stuff here.
Deborah, we have to create an atmosphere where people feel safe to report. Not just kids, not just parents, but everybody feels safe to report these kinds of things because there's some reason why they're not reporting this stuff.
Right, which is why we open up that with Crime Stoppers. You all have been very good about, from the beginning with Crime Stoppers, is report the crime anonymously, right?
No one's going to know
but
it's you.
In schools, there are things, and that's how my son saw that tweet that someone had sent.
They are the first line of intelligence. We've had people say, well, Houston, because, Crime Stoppers of Houston only serves this area right now. Now it serves the state, but, Houston's just lucky. And it's hard to hear that. Houston is not just lucky. Our program's been in the school since 1997. We've removed almost 300 weapons. Any one of those weapons could have turned into a mass shooting at a school. We've just been boots on the ground, recognizing these kids, they're going to know way before police officers going to know, way before somebody else is going to know. They're the ones that have all the information.
Well, think back to when you were in school. I mean, teachers should be busy teaching.
Yeah.
They shouldn't have to, but they're part of the process, though, right? They have to be part of that process. All right, Jackie White is in our audience this morning. And Jackie, what is your question or comment?
My question is, I understand the saying, it takes a village to raise a child. I understand that we need better health plans for everyone. I understand that the parents should be doing what they should to kind of notice their kids. My problem is right now, I'm a mother, I'm a grandmother, I'm a great-grandmother. Why isn't there detectors in every school? Because while we're working on all this stuff, and it's going to take time to educate people and everything, but for now, to ease my mind and my child that's afraid, or my grandchild, why can't there be detectives, not in the schools that was a shooting at, but all the schools?
And Rhonda touched on that earlier. There are. The sad part is that whenever we come up with something, somebody comes up with a way to overthrow that something. Like, kids leave campus to go to lunch. Oh, yeah. When you come back, you mentioned somebody could throw something over a fence.
You have to think about how are schools built. They're soft targets. Schools are meant to be friendly. Come and play at the playground after school. Mom and dad come in. Grandparents stay. They are not built like a bank or an airport or even a secured site. They're not. So to go back
But we have our most
now,
precious commodity.
But so
in those
they have
schools.
our most precious commodities at the school. But to go back, I mean, you look at the Sandy Hook shooter. He just threw something through the glass panel and gained entry into the entire school and killed 20 first graders. We've got to go back and rethink how we build schools. But the reality is that's going to take a long time. So what do we do now to handle this problem? We do talk about security. We work with law enforcement and say, do you have a blueprint? Do you even know where the gym is? The blueprint you're looking at is 15 years old. Do you know, if we say the shooter's in the gym, where that is now because it's now the library? Do you know what, in certain districts, people don't know? You don't call the city police, you call the school ISD police. Do parents even know that? Parents have to be active in this, not complaining. We say in our own school, I'm not going to the principal's office to say, you need to. No, we need to. And how do we help you keep our kids safe? So if it's funding for security, there's panels you can put on glass to prevent easy access into the school. There's so many things that can be done. But it really, really, truly does take all.
And even the training of just, I know some schools have done this where they train kids what to do in the event of.
Yeah, they do.
But you were in a mall last year
my
when
goodness.
there was a rumor that there was a shooter and people just started trampling each other.
We were in a Houston area mall. I had 5 kids with me, and we heard what was resounding gunshot. And I remembered pausing because I said, I will never, hopefully ever, see what this is like again, just to take in, because this is our work. What's going on? And the hysteria, strollers falling to the side, shoes on the floor, people
getting
jumping
trampled.
over other people. I had very calmly got 5 kids. We exited the mall very quickly, and we learned after law enforcement did not think it was gunshots. But for us in the mall, it was 100% gunshots, and the hysteria is overwhelming. So people who complain about those trainings are actually really, really important.
When it becomes second nature to you to know what to do. And again, I mentioned school's getting ready to start. This has got to be top of mind for a lot of parents. And I kind of have that paranoid child that I think sometimes that might be good.
No, it's fantastic.
He has every scenario there is. He said, okay, so Mom, if I was in a bar, I'm not old enough yet, but if I was in a bar, but he had seen one of the shootings where the gunman blocked the entrance and there was no way out. And he goes, everybody should just quickly throw your beer bottles at him, throw your chairs, just disable that person. And he goes, that's my first thought, is I would throw stuff. It's like, you think you would, hopefully, but he's trying to come up with any kind of thing that could become second nature in his head.
But think about 9/11. I always think of those people on that
Absolutely.
plane that sat with their seatbelts, just waiting to go into the tower. Now somebody gets on the plane and it's terror or it's whatever. You think every single person is going to say, not on this flight.
Yeah.
Every single person. You're going to boil water. You're going to take what you're going to do whatever.
Girl, I got a 6-inch stiletto.
Yes, me too.
It's like
I'm
right
sure.
there we go.
But that's the culture we have to protect ourselves.
Why that plane did not go into the White House was because of
they
the
did
group that
that.
said, we figured out what you're doing and we'll go down fighting.
Yes, go down fighting.
Okay, Sandra, good morning.
Good morning. I understood everything that was said, and pretty much my questions have been answered. I do thank you all. But I have one more. When a mass shooting like this happened, the nation used the platform to discuss what's going on and the issues and safety and what we can do better. But after, for lack of a better word, after the dust settles, what becomes of the platform?
Yeah, well, think about the dust settling. We're talking about these 2 that happened this weekend, but a lot of us forgot the week before we had the Garlic Festival. And then even like in Houston, overnight there were 10 people shot, 10 to 12 people shot overnight, not in a one time, but still the whole violence. I mean, the mass shooting is one of those things I think that really scares us because it's innocent people. It's any one of us. We can put all of us at Walmart that day, right? Versus maybe drug warfare and you got 2 gangs rivaling. They know each other. They know what they're getting into. But when it's the innocent person, and that is what they try to do. They want to instill fear.
Well, for the people that are trying to do this, yeah. And especially if they have an agenda or have a manifesto, I mean, they're trying to make the point. So in a weird way, the coverage of that manifesto and that kind of, we've seen that thing in the opposite with suicide, that less coverage on how someone died and all of that, especially after Kurt Cobain and other kind of tragedies. You just focus on the death that helps tamp down the contagion effect or the copycat.
Yeah.
That for some cases when indirectly there's media coverage of the means and the grisly details.
All the crazy stuff, yeah.
That for some people, especially that are not in a good place, can lead to this contagion, I think, that you spoke about earlier.
And I remember when you say Kurt Cobain, what was lost in all that, all those details are there, what was lost in all that. His aunt actually came on a show and she said what nobody talked about was, it wasn't that he was just a heroin user. What it was is that he suffered from bipolar disorder. And he goes, she said almost every male in their family had died by suicide. And she goes, that's what we need to be talking about. And that was, you know, she was, it was not covered in the beginning, and that became her soapbox. And she's saying this exists. And it was the first time I actually really heard about bipolar disorder at the time. So yeah, not missing.
Can I say one thing about your question too? You talk about after the dust settles. And not to criticize your verbiage, but the dust of hate never settles. When someone is affected by hate, when someone is targeted by a hate crime, not only do they suffer, their family suffers, the entire community suffers, and there are ripple effects that go out and continue for years and years and years. So we can't let the dust of fighting hatred settle. We have got to constantly be working together to do that. I know I sound like a broken record, but if we don't, then we're going to be covered by that dust and we'll never get it all off.
Right,
of
and
us.
have to be careful that the pendulum doesn't swing the other way.
Exactly.
Right now, because we keep hearing this whole thing about, you know, white racism and da 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 da. The pendulum cannot swing the other way. We got to stay steadfast right there in that middle to come up with a solution. All right, Connie.
Yes, one of the major problems that I see is not having enough health care for adults with mental illness. Even if you file a mental health warrant, if they go to HCPC, they can say they're a week or two, and then they're let off like the street. There's not enough health care, and families are dealing with people with mental health illnesses. They don't have the proper documents to help because, you know, they let them have their own decisions, and some of them don't have the capability to make the right decisions for their own health and safety.
Yeah, and that's tough. But in this conversation, you mentioned earlier, there's a difference between that mindset where somebody's more likely to hurt themselves and somebody who's going to commit like a mass shooting type of thing. But in the broader spectrum of mental health, that is a problem that we deal with. And especially when people can't afford it, it can overwhelm our hospitals. And they do get, let out.
I couldn't, and we heard the president speak about it this morning, and Connie, it sounds like you've had this experience, and I have too, in terms of, but can we separate out the mental health issue from the tragedy and from a mass shooting? Because again, this is, it doesn't feel like it now, but since the early 1990s, the homicide rate, the murder rate has dropped in half. Might not feel like it today, but the suicide rate has remained stubbornly high, and in subsets of people, teenagers, has gone up. And I think that's what we need to look. To me, in the suicide, that's where you see the mental health, the undertreated mental health, the lack of access, the laws which have swung so far that families feel powerless, especially once you're 18, to do anything for a sick loved one. So I agree with you on that, but I think you see the statistics more on the suicide rate, which again, stubbornly high, decade after decade, where homicide has come down substantially. Again, doesn't feel like it though.
But I do think there's a link between young kids who are suicidal and turning homicidal, that they're saying, I'm going to take my own life, but I'm taking you guys down with me because you bullied me, you isolated me, you ignored me. And I do think there is a rise in that, and that is very, very, very concerning.
Yeah. And then sometimes, do you feel like, sometimes I just get the feeling that somebody wants to do something awful to show their power, and they falsely hang it on some type of ideal, that's, they don't really believe that. That's not really their deal. They just have to justify why they're doing something and finding their fan club and doing it.
It feels like this way of the mass shooting has become a social expression, especially since Columbine. Or before that, you can find instances, but nothing like the frequency and the intensity of what we're seeing now, which feels like it's increasing.
Yeah. All right. Let's go to Brandy and see what people are saying on social media now.
Well, Deborah, one of the conversations that we've been having is about video games, because that's something that Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick said could have contributed to this. I tweeted his quote, "We've always had guns, always had evil, but I see a video game industry that teaches young people to kill." So the question I posed off of that is, are video games a contributing factor for mass shootings? A lot of responses here, a lot of dialogue. This person tweeted, they have a role, but they don't think they're the main reason. A lot of people responded that this theory has been debunked, that you could get away with saying something like this in the 90s, but not anymore. Other people call this excuse kind of a scapegoat. But this guy, Dakota, says it's possible that it could be a factor. But if you're talking about video games, Hollywood has got to be to blame as well. They make movies showing gun violence. Car makers show commercials of people getting hurt in car crashes. He says the list goes on and on. The internet is full of stuff. And TK says, I don't blame video games, but I do blame social media. Makes it much easier to bully, easier to go on anonymous rants that fire people up, and easier to use for a platform for 15 minutes of infamy. And we've already seen so many rumors circling about the alleged shooter in El Paso and the shooter in Dayton. I want to encourage folks to go to khou.com/verify, where we've separated a lot of fact from fiction in those stories. We're still learning a lot. There are a lot of answers we don't have, but what we do know, we're sharing it with you on khou.com. Deb.
All right, thank you very much, Brandy. And Dr. Stevens, you just kind of said that that was a theory at one time, but that has since been debunked. All right, we're going to wrap things up here. And as we do, I want to address something it's hard for people to hear, because we want to have an answer. We want to say, aha, that's it, right? So in a country of 320 million people, there are things that happen in the mind that we can't quite explain or fully understand. It's just going to happen.
I don't think we can control this at this point, but we can influence the direction. Is this a problem that's going to escalate or get better? I think you could influence that by your daily actions. You can't retreat into a shell. How you get proactive is going to be different. Some people have suggested arming yourself, but it could be in the ballot box. It could be the kind of initiatives you support and not forgetting about it. I think someone said, we're not waiting for the dust to settle, because it doesn't seem like the dust is settling at all on this issue.
Right. And I think because it's going to be a multifaceted approach. Speaking of arming oneself, I had a couple of officers say to me, our one concern is when we show up on the scene, you may have taken out the bad guy, but we think you're the bad guy. So be careful with that.
And that, it's funny, because earlier when she was going through the social media posts, and I was like, yes, yes, yes. The one I said, ooh, was arming yourself. And again, it's complicated, because when we were in that mall and there was the chaos, and we got out and we saw all of the law enforcement streaming in. You don't want to be standing there with a gun and in a shooting match with law enforcement when you're trying to defuse the situation.
A home invasion situation is a different atmosphere.
That's completely different, completely different. And then, we want to challenge people. Wake up today and be public safety minded. You don't need to be afraid. You don't need to be paranoid. You don't need to have any ill feelings towards anyone, but just be public safety minded and wake up tomorrow and be public safety minded. And that way, this is going to infiltrate everything we do. It's going to affect who we vote for, how we talk, how we think, how we treat others, how we respond, how we report things. We can actually make a huge change that way.
Yeah. Like you said, we can't necessarily guarantee we're going to control every human mind out there. It's part of the bad parts about being human, if you will, but we can certainly probably avoid some things. All right. Tell us what we can do and what your final thoughts are on this.
Well, I have a couple of final thoughts. You asked, is it just going to happen? We can't believe that it's just going to happen. We can't ignore the signs of hatred. And to Ranya's point about we have to work together. We have got to work together on all aspects of this. Otherwise, we can't change things. We can change things if we work together. We can fight hate in many different ways. That's what we've got to redouble our efforts to do.
Hate and anger. I think anger is in there too. Hate's one thing, but anger is another thing as well.
It's a deadly combination.
Yeah. All right, Martin.
I wanted to talk about the platforms that we've been discussing today, the social media platforms, but there are other platforms that we need to begin to communicate on. And I think that, as our audience friends suggested, that when the dust settles, we have to be in the churches, the synagogues, the temples, the mosques, having the leaders of those organizations talk about these issues and standing up against hate. We have to do it in sports teams as well. Coaches have a great opportunity. School teachers have that great opportunity.
Whoever has an audience.
That's right. And so I think what the reminder is today is that this is something that's not just on the dark web or the light web, but this is something that we all have to talk about and deal with on a regular basis and find family solutions and school solutions and broaden that one by one.
All right, I'm going to end up with, in a perfect world.
In a perfect world, there'd be health care, there'd be good enough treaters to treat people, be access, limited access for people to very dangerous military-style weapons on our streets of Houston.
All right, Rania.
I would just say there'd be kindness and grace.
Yeah, I'm with you. Be kind. Think with your third eye. Look with your third eye. Before you say something, you just get the other opinion from a non-judgmental point of view, right? Dina?
We had a campaign a couple years ago, Imagine a World Without Hate. In a perfect world, we wouldn't have hate.
All right, Martin?
And I would say that it's important that we stand together, that we realize that while we have differences, we must come together and build respect for one another.
Yeah, all right. Thank you all very much. Thank you, our live studio audience, and those of you who participated online and on our phone lines. And I guess I can wrap it up by repeating what one of our audience members said earlier. And she said, it's just going to take a village. Thank you very much.